Historia que tú hiciste, historia por hacer, porque nadie resiste tus ganas de vencer. Las madres, las estrellas, brillen mucha Martín, de lejos y de cerca, los traes hasta aquí. Llegó tu camiseta.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast. I am your host, Kiyan Sobhani, and joining me today is Arvind. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Our usual co-host, Gabe Lestra, is out with an injury. He did something to his back. I don't know exactly the details, but we wish Gabe a swift recovery. He is now day-to-day. Hopefully he'll be back for Wednesday's bonus pod, which we will preview Atletico. And that's just before the derby. And honestly, like, this podcast is like a very rare podcast. We have like almost nothing to talk about. I don't know. Like we were talking off air about what we're gonna say. I think we have a general flow. Like we have a lot of questions that came in, and we'll probably get to some non-patron questions tonight because we have time. But off the bat, want to congratulate 14 Madridistas who will be at the World Cup. Ramos, Nacho, Carvajal, Isco, Asensio, Modric, Kovacic, Marcelo, Casemiro, Ronaldo, Cruz, Varane, Navas, and Achraf Hakimi, whose Morocco side also qualified yesterday. So congrats to all those. You know what's funny is that 14 I thought was a big number. It's actually not that big of a number for Real Madrid. I think at the Euros we had like almost as many. And now you take into consideration that Pepe's gone. Bale didn't make it. And I don't know. Benzema's not going to be there. It kind of feels like it should be more.
Yeah.
The biggest news, obviously, Gabe and Sam and I talked about this very briefly on the midweek show. We talked about Bale's injury because it happened like just before we started recording. What was your initial thought when you saw the news?
Well, my first thought was like, not again, because it's becoming more recurrent, these injuries over the past couple of seasons, and you just feel bad for the guy. You know, you think he's going to come back, he thinks he's going to come back, and then something happens with, usually it's like his leg or something around his calf area that gets pulled up, or it's his thigh or his hamstring. And it just seems to just keep hitting him. And I honestly, like, if I was in his shoes, I would have given up a long time ago because it must be demoralizing. And there have been a couple of like tweets that have come out talking about the injury, and they've noted that Bale has only played like around 50% of the minutes available to him since he's come to Real Madrid. So that's a pretty big number. And in his first two seasons, it was actually around like 70%, so it was pretty good. And then his last two seasons, it was like under 50. So it's really his last two seasons which have hit him hard. And then you have this season, which is even worse, obviously. And that's really the question with Bale for me is his health. Because unlike most people, or some people, I shouldn't say most people, unlike some people, I don't really question his ability. I think when he's fit, he's a top 5 player in the world. He provides Madrid with a combination of qualities that I don't think any other player can now, with Ronaldo on the decline. And he's just really valuable in that sense. But at what point do we, I think he's like, he's gonna hit 30 soon. If he's not playing and he's just getting recurrently injured, at what point do we think that we should cut ties? Because we're essentially making a bet, right? Like, when we hold on to Bale, that he's going to be fit for a large enough part of the season to make an impact, and if he's not, it's kind of a waste. So I'm starting now, like it's just been happening so often that I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't be the saddest if we decided after this season, okay, we sell Bale, as cruel as a thought that is, just because of his injuries. But clubs kind of have to be ruthless in that sense, and yeah, that's just kind of the way I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, people like saying like he's gonna go in January. First of all, just pump the brakes. It's impossible. It's not gonna happen. And these people do exist, by the way. I think in a lot of ways, I kind of share your sentiments. I wasn't sure if we were going to have the same view or not, but like you look at the list of like just athletes who have just kind of their careers have been like huge what ifs, and you look at it now even in the NBA, and you look at someone like Embiid, who is potentially he is like a unicorn. He's unbelievable, and then he plays like 50% of the time. He's on a minute restriction, he doesn't play, like, and you wonder like what is the value of a player like that. And at this point, like, and I'm with you, like there's no question about his ability. I think if people are questioning his ability, I just don't think they can properly analyze the game, to be honest. There's no question about like what he can do on the field. There's no question, and it wasn't that long ago where he's shown that this season against Dortmund, against Sociedad. He's been really good. I wonder, like you mentioned, like the injuries have been mostly recurring in the past 2 seasons, and if you go back all the way to Tottenham, like this just wasn't an issue. And I wonder if there is a corner to eventually be turned or not. I remember being so fed up with Robin when he was here, and I was, when he was on the pitch, I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, I would always just trash talk all of my friends who support other teams. Like I remember we were playing against Roma in the Champions League knockout stages. I was like, you guys are done. Robin is playing, and then Robin would just never play in those games I was trash talking about, and Real Madrid would lose. And it was so frustrating. And it was like, and then he left, and you were like, well, he was great, but you can justify it because he just didn't play. And then he goes to Bayern and he turns it around. Bale is 27 right now. When we sold Robin, if I'm remembering correctly, he was 25. And I'm just wondering, is it something that we sell him and then he goes and he has a healthy career?
I mean, like, I see that. That is a comparison I've been thinking about for the past 2 seasons whenever I look at Bale's injuries. And that's kind of the defense I've used, like, in the past when I'm arguing with, like, like Andra, who kind of felt the way I'm sort of feeling now at the beginning of the season. I use that Bale comparison because it is a good one, right? Like, that is the what if you sell him and then it turns out to be a mistake. So Bale's not 27, he's 28, but it's not Yeah. So that's kind of thing, right? Like you got rid of Robin when he was 25 and Bale's 28. Bale's a lot closer to his like peak or the years where he'd begin to decline than Robin was. And I think Robin's game is more technical. I don't think Bale's a bad technical player, and as we've discussed, he's improved technically over the past couple of seasons. I feel like if Bale's pace declines, which these are the years where that's going to happen, 28, 29, 30, and the injuries kind of affect that. I just don't feel he's going to be as effective and as dynamic. Pace is a big part of Robin's game, don't get me wrong, but he's also one of the best dribblers in the world. He's got he cuts inside, he's got a wicked curling shot. There's more technical aspects to his game, whereas when you think of Bale, he's a physical beast. Like, he's superb in the air, he's really fast. And with his age and considering how his game is slightly different from Robin's, it makes me lean more to the side where I think it's less of a risk to sell Bale, or else I think there's like less of a chance that he just goes on and explodes, for 2-3 seasons in a row like Robin does. Because I do think there's a chance if we get rid of him now, he goes to Manchester United and he has one brilliant season. But then after that, does he get injured? Does he drop off? If you get my thought process.
When we sold Robin, that was the year that Kaká and Ronaldo came. And obviously I think most fans would just at that time they had just forgotten about Robin easily because of the players who were coming in. And then a few years passed and you realize Kaká's a bust and Robin's fantastic, and then you're like, oh man, imagine if we had the opportunity to see Robin and Ronaldo on opposite wings together. That would have been unbelievable. We think we saw it for like just a bit of some preseason, and that was it. And then he left. I don't know. Like I don't. How deep is the world football talent pool at this point? This is my question. Considering that Real Madrid's financial muscle relative to the rest of Europe is not what it was when Real Madrid lost Robin, I do question about what do you flip Bale for, essentially. And so this kind of leads us into and at any point I'm just jumping, but this kind of leads us into our first Patreon questions, which was from Sajid Reyes. And if you want to get a guaranteed response to your questions and get different rewards, go to patreon.com/Managing Madrid. You can get different rewards. You can get followed by the Managing Madrid account on Twitter. You can get myself to write an article about your choice. You can join us on the podcast. You can sponsor the show. A bunch of cool stuff there. Go check it out. Sajid says, with the Bale injury for the upteenth time, is it time to use the summer to really beef up our options for both the current and future? I feel that it's time to trade in Benzema and Bale and acquire the services of Neymar, Gabriel Jesus, which would comfortably secure our post-PPC future. What do you guys think? I don't know about going into so many names now. I think it's important to note that Real Madrid's financial muscle isn't what it was. And I think this is why we have so much emphasis on youth. I would be, again, like we have a whole season to play out. This is the other thing that we haven't thought about yet. Like we're still so young into the season. Assuming Bale comes back in January, because if he comes back mid-December, I don't think they rush him for the Clásico, which is on the 23rd. Although, who knows, maybe. But then you also don't know if another month becomes 2 months, 3 months. I don't know. I guess your first thought on this song, what is it? Like, are you looking at names already? Are you thinking ahead?
Yeah, kind of, because if I'm thinking that, well, it's essentially the question comes to like, how much can you rely on Bale, right? Like, and not just like rely when he is playing, in the sense that rely in the big games. Like, how much can you rely on Bale to essentially win you a season? Because it kind of like Ronaldo, right? Like, we've thought of Bale as the Ronaldo replacement for a while, and ability-wise, he was almost there. And I think in 15-16, he got as close as anyone could have imagined. It was incredible. But at this point, I just don't think Bale's reliable enough, right? Like, for Real Madrid to put kind of their hopes on him to lead an attack, and with Benzema and Ronaldo dropping off, you would think it's really important that Bale's there, right, to take over, and he's just not because of injuries, which aren't really his fault. So yeah, of course, I'm kind of looking at names, and honestly, I've been looking at a name that most people haven't been considering, and I don't know why, and it's James.
Yeah.
Because we will have an option to get him back, and he's doing great things at Bayern Munich right now. And with, say we sell Bale, I really don't think there will be a kind of playing time issue for him anymore, if Zidane is willing to play him on the right wing. And if he is, I think James would be a fantastic addition. We've talked about before how good we think James is on the right wing.
Yeah.
That would kind of be my first option, because he was already a Real Madrid player. He fits in really well, so that's why I wouldn't be that worried about replacing Bale's talent. And also, Real Madrid's strength is kind of like attacking midfielders / wingers. Really, like, where our weakness is kind of now is like the striker position, right? Because we only really have Karim Benzema and no one else.
I think you're onto something. I think the James thing, like, it came to my mind as well. I'm not sure. In the end, I still think the ball is in Bayern's court on that one. That's why I'm unsure of the realism of him coming back. A year ago, 2 years ago, I would have thought it would be crazy if you would have built any Real Madrid team without James in your future lineup. And then Asensio emerged, and then Isco made a leap, and then obviously became a bit more expendable in Zidane's system. But again, like, sometimes we cling to these positions like, oh my God, there's no number 10 in Real Madrid system. This football is not stagnant anymore. It's not about number 10s and 6s and 7s and 9s and 4s. It doesn't matter. Like, players are interchangeable. You saw it with Isco. You see with Asensio. Like you said, like, James is one of his best seasons as a footballer was with Monaco on the right wing. That's where he literally...
James was never a 10 with Ancelotti either. I mean, not that we
No.
necessarily want to try to stick him in as a central midfielder, and I don't think Zidane would handle that the best, but it's not like this number 10 position ever existed in this side for James to thrive in.
If we're thinking really long term, like I understand this, the whole Neymar thing keeps popping up, and it's been popping up a lot lately. Ramos made some jokes about it over the weekend. You had tweeted it, I think it was you. You tweeted something like when Neymar first got sold, you were like, this is his path to Real Madrid eventually. Like the same way OG Ronaldo did it, right?
Yeah.
I kind of see a world where I think Mbappe would come still before Neymar would. I don't know. I'm still not losing hope on the Mbappe thing.
I mean, I've not lost hope in the sense that I think we can. I don't know. Mbappe is like, how old is he now? What is he, still 18 or is he 19? Because I'm thinking like, I don't know, when Mbappe is like 24, 25, when he's basically conquered everything he can at PSG, he's like, okay, I want to move on to a new challenge at Real Madrid.
Yeah, that's exactly how I say it. I think like between 23 and 25 when he's entering his peak.
Yeah, Neymar. I part of my like belief that Neymar will come to Madrid is just purely my desire to have a player of Neymar's quality, and the fact that I was a big fan of his before he went to Barcelona. And then another part of it is that he did admire a lot of Real Madrid players. He admired Real Madrid when he was a kid, and it's clear that he left Barcelona under somewhat sour circumstances. So I don't think he would be like, oh, I played for Barcelona, so I have a loyalty. I think he'd be like, well, I like Madrid, right? Like, because he's a very career-oriented player in that sense.
He has friends in the squad too now.
Yeah, and Marcelo is huge friends with Neymar, so I don't see a problem with him like coming. So like, say this like whole Benzema deal, right? We have like, let's say Neymar comes next season, we sell Benzema, and then we have Ronaldo as a striker and Neymar on the left wing. I mean, that's just incredible thought, right? Like, I just don't think we could be stopped. So like, it's partly like just my own desire to have him, but I do think there are motivating factors for Neymar to come. Whether it will happen next season, I don't know. That would depend on a lot, because Neymar has a lot to prove at PSG, because he left there wanting to lead his own team. So like, let's say he wins the treble, then maybe, but I don't think he's coming anytime, like any immediate time. So like maybe 2 or 3 seasons at the very least.
I've been tracking the health of their roster since the beginning of the season, and I love just hearing these reports about the internal drama and the implosions. My problem is I don't believe any of it. Like I'm really not sure if I really believe it.
Same.
Yeah, but I would love for it to be true. Like I can see some potential for some of it being true. Like I can picture the players being annoyed with Neymar just as the personality and the privileges he gets. I also wonder like what the team dynamic is like. Like we talk about Neymar's loyalty to Barcelona and whether he would go to Real Madrid or not. I don't think he cares. Like, did you see Di Maria's comments? I don't know when it was, yesterday, 2 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, that was slightly shocking. But then again, like, these guys are professionals. Most of them are career oriented, right? So when Real Madrid fans look at this, they're like, "Oh, we're fans, so we'd go to Real Madrid, we'd die for the club. You know, we wouldn't even accept a high salary. We'd like get paid £2 per week, and like we just play, right?" But these guys go to places to win, and they're thinking career first. Generally, like most players are not like Nacho. I do think though that Di Maria wouldn't have said that if he left Real Madrid on better terms. I think he would have a little more loyalty in that sense if he didn't feel like he was cheated out of a better contract by Florentino Perez and the board. So like, yeah, I think it's both ways. I think it's like him looking at a career sense, because going to Barcelona would be an excellent move for him. They could use someone like him, especially with, you know, Dembele growing into the role. Di Maria could help him do that. I basically said what I wanted to say.
I don't see any obligation to be loyal to us. I really don't.
Yeah.
If you're a fan, you have to realize that not everyone is a fan of your team. You know what the equivalent is if like in a parallel universe, so we were actually good enough to play professionally, like I get signed by Manchester City, and then pretending like I need to be loyal to them and not go to Manchester United at some point. And like no one cares. And unless you're growing up as a Real Madrid fan, or you've become so attached to that team, like it just, it doesn't cross your mind, I don't think, especially when that much money is waving in front of you.
And the thing is, right, like Real Madrid fans, I mean, and just fans in general, really don't mind when another player from another rival team comes to our team, right? Like that doesn't bother us, because Raul, it wasn't really his fault, really, but he came from the Atletico Madrid academy, and that has a lot to do with like the academy just collapsing. But he came as like from that youth system, basically an Atletico Madrid fan, and then he became a Real Madrid legend. So like that's why it's the loyalty in that sense. Like most players don't have it because it doesn't make practical sense. Like the way I think about it is, if I was a young, talented player, 17, 18 years old, I'm a Real Madrid fan, and then Atletico Madrid comes with an offer to sign me, and there's no indication that Real Madrid is going to sign me. And if I turn this down just because I'm a Real Madrid fan, who knows if Real Madrid will ever sign me? Of course I take that, because footballers have so few opportunities, right, to get signed like that. Of course I take that to Atletico Madrid, because I may never get a chance to be a professional footballer again. So you got to look at it from that perspective, right? It's like, am I going to have a career, or am I going to be successful or not? And that's how like 99.9% of footballers look at things.
Sajid's question about Gabriel Jesus, like in a vacuum, I would always take Jesus, I think, and I think Jesus has a lot of potential. But I think, again, the problem is that the way a lot of people think about this thing is that they just write down names that they would love to have, and then they just assume it becomes a reality. Gabriel Jesus is going to get paid really well. Pep loves him, and they're building something really cool and special there at Manchester City.
Yeah,
so I just don't think it's easy to just come up with names and be like, well, let's just fit this in the puzzle and then call it a day,
Yeah. If I was Gabriel Jesus, I don't know why I'd leave unless I had this burning desire to play for Real Madrid, because like you said, he's got a really good thing going there. Yeah. He's under arguably the best manager in the world. He's got a great system that's being built to maximize his strengths. Manchester City are an up-and-coming team who could dominate football like for the next 6 seasons. So unless like the team implodes or something, I wouldn't leave and come and like compete with Benzema or something like that. I definitely stay where I was.
Another patron question, which is kind of just going to take us to a completely different direction, but one of our patrons, Ilian Zako, is asking whatever happened to Alex Febas. So in just a quick 30-second spiel about Febas, he was Castilla's best player last season. And I thought it was interesting because he was better than Enzo. He was better than Fede Valverde. He was better than, over the course of the season, he was better than Odegaard. And out of all those players, he was the one that didn't get a top flight La Liga deal. He's in the Segunda with Zaragoza. Now, having said that, he's been really good for Zaragoza. He's been starting most of the games. He's pulling the strings from deep. He's playing as he was with Cas. It took him a while to get going, and I've been able to watch him a bit more as the season's progressed. Because it was impossible to put Zaragoza on the schedule when you're juggling a million things and watching 10,000 things. But he's doing good. I don't know what happens and what his trajectory is, but if you remember, Jesus Vallejo was captaining Real Zaragoza in the Segunda, and then he went to Frankfurt, and now he's very promising. So just because he's in Segunda doesn't mean Febas is not going to come good. Interesting question, Noam, from Owen Thompson, who is now also a Managing Madrid writer, and he's also working on these cool stats. So I think Owen is going to be a really natural fit because he works in the stats arena and he comes up with these really cool graphics, and his job right now is basically to come up with stats that we don't really get to see. So he's always welcome. So his question is, if you could have dinner with one current one retired, and one deceased Real Madrid player, what trio would you choose? Okay, so let's go. Let's just break it down one by one. So you tell me your current one, and I'll tell you my current one.
So mine would probably have to be Ronaldo, since he's my favorite player. And essentially, like, he's the one that kind of got me into the sport. So, why not pick him? It's an easy choice.
Yeah, I think I'd go with Cristiano.
Yeah, plus he seems like a cool guy to hang out with, so it's a plus.
He's not my favorite player in the squad, but I think what I would do is I would sit down with him, and assuming that he would actually, give honest answers and like be happy to see me, which I don't know if he would be, but I'd want to hack his brain about his routines, his drive. I think he's one of those guys that would be a fascinating science experiment, or like a really great book to have.
Yeah, I don't think he'd want to sit down and have dinner with you.
No, I don't blame him. In that case, I'd choose Marcos Llorente. Because afterwards we'd probably go and play some Mario Kart.
I'm surprised you didn't say Bale.
No, I actually think Bale would be the guy I'd choose. I don't know. I would be between Bale and Ronaldo. But the problem is that even though I like Bale more, I think the conversation would be more interesting with Ronaldo.
The most interesting conversation would probably be with Marcelo.
Yeah, Marcelo's a good one. Retired, who would you get?
Zidane, because he's the coach and he's a retired player, so I could like sit down with him and grill him about all his tactics and stuff. So yeah, that's a pretty easy decision for me.
Assuming you would grill him.
Yeah, I'd show him my articles and be like, Zidane, you made mistakes here. What were you thinking, man?
He would just give you political answers.
Yeah.
For me, it would undoubtedly be Raul. No question. My biggest question would be, why did you grow your hair out? Because that's when your decline started. Deceased.
And Di Stefano, without a shadow of a doubt, because he's just such a legend, right? Yeah. Like the whole aura of the club is just built around his image. So just to be able to be in the same room with him would be awesome.
I mean, it has to be Di Stefano. Although Puskás would be interesting too.
Yeah, Puskás sounds like an interesting guy, and he's my second favorite legend.
Yeah. Question from Hala Madrid on Twitter. He says, how far was Kovacic away from becoming a starter before his injury? And will he get a start in midfield after the poor recent form of Kroos, Casemiro, and Modric? So, I think he was close. If he wasn't already there. Because, essentially he was there. He started in big games when Kroos, Casemiro, or Modric, just couldn't play, and he was phenomenal. Like, there was no drop-off, which was unbelievable. He did everything he was supposed to do. Defensively he was fine. Offensively, his ball carrying ability, by the way, has been sorely missed because the transition offensively hasn't been good. And defensively, I mean, I don't know how much Kovacic would have been helpful defensively in transition, because I think it's more of schematic issues rather than a personnel issue. But in terms of how close he is to starting him, I think he's right there.
I mean, I'd agree with that. But in the sense of the question, which is I think, is he going to come back and be a starter ahead of Kroos or Modric or Casemiro when everyone's fit? The answer to me is a clear no.
Not this season anyway, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot, right? Because Modric, who I think has dropped off a little bit, is still arguably the best midfielder in the world. Kroos is Kroos. I mean, he's arguably the best midfielder in the world. It's between Kroos or Modric. And then Kovacic is not going to take Casemiro's position because while I think he could do an able job as a defensive midfielder, Zidane obviously doesn't see him there. And I don't see Kovacic playing there as an ideal spot for him. So it's going to take a while. It might take another 2 seasons before Modric is finally done and Kovacic could step in. But out of all the central midfielders we have, he's primed to take the spot of whoever drops off or whoever gets sold.
I think we'll take 2 more questions on. One from Satyam on Facebook. He says, a genuine question for you. If you were Harry Kane, what would you have done? move to Madrid, where after every other bad game, the fans boo you off and start asking for your head, or stay at Tottenham, where you have a statue built in your honor and the fans chant, Harry Kane, he is one of us. Obviously, this is clearly referring to the Bernabeu and the fans in general. I don't know. I don't know if I don't think players make decisions based on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what's surprising when I was like thinking about this, because I saw this question before and I was thinking about it. It doesn't seem like players like think about the Bernabeu and they're like, oh, the fans are mean, so I'm not going to come here. You always hear Madrid players after they come, they talk about it, but it's like they never considered that beforehand. So if I was Kane, that's not the reason I wouldn't come to Madrid. The reason I would stay at Tottenham is probably because I grew up in their youth system, and that, like was stated in the question, I have a chance to become a real legend. So it's like and it's also that Tottenham's a promising side, right? Like if this was Tottenham in like 2013 or something, if I was Kane, I'd probably say I'd want to go to Real Madrid. But this is 2017. It's under Pochettino, where Tottenham beat Real Madrid and drew with them, and they have a really promising project. And imagine if I'm Kane and I deliver the Premier League title to the Spurs fans, like I'm an instant legend. I'm arguably the greatest striker of all time. So sure, he could come to Real Madrid and build a legend, but like the appeal of building your legend at Tottenham would probably be greater given all the context behind the team, the manager, and the history.
Yeah, I think the really great players see it as a challenge, because if you actually get yourself through all that criticism, and you get to that pantheon of really great players who can deal with it, you all of a sudden go from like a frail mental player who's kind of, disappointed in the fans are booing and whatever, and you don't fade away. You just, your name gets, you look at the names who made it to that top, like Zidane and Raul and Di Stefano and Ronaldo and all these legends. And I know that's the legacy players want to have. Have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
Yeah.
I think it's the beginning where it says like the two most dangerous words in the English language are good job. That's what I think of when I think of this stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that kind of drive, and like just to prove people wrong is, if you're great enough, you just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. Great players can handle the criticism. They, like Ronaldo, they sometimes enjoy it. They like proving players wrong. But having said that, I don't want anyone to fall under the illusion that this is a justification for what the Bernabeu does. Like, no. Having said all of that, as fans, we should probably not be booing our own players. Like, it would be better if we acted like fans. So, I mean, like, there's kind of like a fine line there. Like, yes, players can deal with criticism, but like when you think criticism, you're like talking about from the media, from Barcelona fans, like not from our own stadium, which is supposed to be the 12th man.
Yeah, the guy from Whiplash, he would criticize, right? He would be hard on the drummer intentionally because he knew what he was doing. The Bernabeu has no idea what they're doing. Yeah, they have no such intention. Last question is from Rebecca Teasdale, and I thought we could take it on because it gives us a chance to clear up something. Rebecca says, why do you compare Ceballos with Vazquez? I agree Ceballos deserves more minutes, but he doesn't have the speed to be a winger, and we can't have all similar players, Kroos, Isco, Modric, all being central midfielders and playmakers. We need fast wingers, and I doubt Ceballos could play there on the wing. We already shoehorned Isco in. So I think this is kind of, we talked about in multiple previous games, like almost every game this season, that Ceballos would have been a more interesting dynamic and addition and an overall more talented player, rather than bringing on Isco every game in the second half. And I don't think either you or I or Gabe really said it with the intention that these two are similar players, because they're not. But we think they bring different things, and they can still come on as the first sub, and they can be interchangeable. So do you want to like kind of explain why?
Yeah, so the idea was like never to sub on Ceballos for a winger, right? Because what Zidane's been doing is taking off a central midfielder for a winger and kind of going like a 4-2-4 type thing. It's essentially a like-for-like sub. So Ceballos comes on for Modric or Kroos or whatever, and we have, maybe Isco move wide, who's in a diamond, or something like that, right? So it isn't like a Ceballos for a winger type substitution. It's Ceballos for another central midfielder, and we keep the three in the middle, and we keep that formation. We just have a different person playing in that formation.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. Was if you say you want to bring Ceballos on instead of Vazquez, you're not saying Ceballos go play out wide. It's kind of similar to like how we would put James there. It's like you're not asking him to be a traditional winger who just bombs up and down the field. I think you're just looking for a different dimension. Dani Ceballos is a player who can break down really compact defenses. And he does it with a similar vision that we talk about of Isco, but he's very decisive, I think. And this is from watching a lot of Ceballos film. Like, and you go back to the under-21 game just this past week against Iceland, who Iceland are very deprived of talent, quite frankly, but they're very well coached and they're very well organized. And defensively, they play very good as a whole, even at the youth level, not just the senior level. And the team constantly just looked to funnel everything through Ceballos. And he played almost as a left winger, but he was mostly just cutting inside and shooting or playing these nice passes. And that's what Ceballos can do. Like your point was, you can push Isco out wide if you want. You can push Asensio out wide. You can make overloads with the wing backs and keep Ceballos tucked in centrally. But against Tottenham in particular, like we always mention this, you could have really used a presence like that. I mean, ideally it would have been someone like Kovacic, but Ceballos would have helped too, because the midfield needed help both offensively and defensively, and Ceballos can do that. And Vazquez is just hugging the right hand touchline, and I just think it becomes really predictable that way. We almost got to 40 minutes for a podcast that we had nothing to talk about. It's pretty amazing. Anything to add on? Anything to plug before we wrap it up?
Nope.
No, nothing. We got obviously the big derby next weekend. Isco is questionable, unfortunately, because he got a ridiculously rash challenge on him. And this is why we hate international football. At least like international football can bring a lot of excitement if it's like qualifiers or something. Friendlies.
Yeah, this was a friendly.
Yeah. Friendlies should just be abolished. I don't care if your team needs practice or rhythm. Forget it. No one cares. You can get that in practice and training. Watch videos, do some team bonding sessions, and I just think that international friendlies are really the worst thing. Although, if you're a small country, it's probably pretty cool. But the club trumps all. Marvin, thank you so much for joining me, and for our patrons who are listening to this, we'll catch you Wednesday. We will do a preview of the derby and probably have Jeremy Barron from Into the Calderon join us to help preview that game. As always, Hala Madrid.
Hala Madrid.